Hello, and welcome back to Angelica's Morbid Minutes. I'm Angelica, your memory keeper, your late night fact checker, your chaos researcher in flannel, and tonight we're paddling into something new. This is our first Mini Morbid. These are bite-sized but still soul-heavy stories, the ones that don't need an hour to wreck you, stories that hide in the cracks of your local paper, stories that slip away before a national headline can catch them. The kinds of cases that haunt a town but never make it past the county line. And every mini morbid we cover will be in Maine, my home state. I was born here, raised here, and live here now. I've walked these woods, I've stood on these docks, I've driven these winding back roads in the dark, past shuttered diners and summer cabins that look haunted in the off-season. These aren't just cases to me. They're personal. They feel close because they are. When a story breaks in Maine, it doesn't just echo, it reverberates. Somehow, someone always knows someone. Someone always has a connection. And sometimes, someone used to be your neighbor, or might have been. That's what makes tonight's story so sharp, so intimate, so hard to breathe through. It happened just an hour from my house. A woman, fiercely independent, deeply loved, and known for her grit, took a solo paddleboard trip across Crawford Pond. Something she'd done before. Something she trusted. But this time, she didn't come back. By morning, the whole town was watching the water. And by afternoon, it wasn't just a missing person. It was a homicide. This is the story of Sunshine Stewart, a woman taken not by wilderness or weather, but by another person. Someone young, someone close, someone who saw a peaceful pond and shattered it. This is Mini Morbid Episode 1, Still Waters Lie, the murder of Sunshine Stewart. Let's get into it. It was a warm, quiet night in Union, Maine, the kind of midsummer evening that wraps around you like a flannel blanket. The air smelled like pine sap and charcoal. Kids at the Micmac Cove campground were finishing up marshmallows. Flashlights bobbed through the trees. Someone strummed a guitar off-key. It was July 2nd, 2025. And as the last pinks of daylight bled into the tree line, Sunshine, also known as Sunny, Stewart, stepped onto her paddleboard and pushed off from the shore of Crawford Pond. No one thought anything of it. Why would they? She lived there, a seasonal camper who knew these woods and waters better than most. She was a regular, a familiar face, and more importantly, she was capable. The kind of woman who fixed her own plumbing and could parallel park a boat between two buoys without blinking. So when someone saw her gliding out across the water alone, no one stopped her, no one warned her, no one knew they should. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. The next morning, July 3rd, campground staff realized something wasn't right. Her vehicle was still parked. Her gear hadn't moved. Friends she'd made at the campground said they hadn't seen her. And most importantly, her board was missing. Local authorities began searching the area. Crawford Pond isn't massive, but it has nooks. Tree-lined alcoves, reed-heavy bends, and small islands just far enough off the main path to disappear into silence. One of those islands is called 100 Acre Island, and near its rocky edge, they found her. Sunshine's body was floating in the shallows, partially caught in a thicket of cattails. She wasn't wearing a life vest, but she didn't need one. She'd been an experienced swimmer and paddler. Her board was nearby. At first, some thought maybe she'd fallen, hit her head. That happens. But the truth didn't match the scene. This wasn't an accident. The medical examiner ruled it quickly and clearly. Homicide. She'd been strangled. She had suffered blunt force trauma. Someone had attacked her and left her in the pond. And just like that, Union, this postcard pretty town of barely 2,300 people, became the backdrop of a violent murder. The campground was immediately locked down. Search dogs were brought in. Divers rechecked the pond. Campers were questioned. Some started packing up early. Others, mostly local families, stayed, confused and unnerved, hoping this was some mistake. But it wasn't. And in a town where everyone knows everyone, or at least they think they do, there was no suspect, no witness, no explanation. Just an empty board, a woman who should have been safe, and a sickening silence hanging over the water. That silence wouldn't last long. The investigation moved fast. At least, it looked fast on paper. Behind the scenes, police had their eyes on a specific camper. A teenager, 17 years old, Devin Young, from Frankfort, Maine, a small riverside town about an hour northeast of Union. He'd been staying at Micmac Cove Campground, the same campground where Sonny lived. Not a stranger passing through, not someone from out of state, one of their own. Police didn't give many details at first. In fact, for nearly 2 weeks, they'd refused to confirm a name or a motive. But the pieces were already falling into place. Locals whispered, campground regulators started connecting timelines. The evening of July 2nd, Sonny had been seen chatting near the communal fire pit. Devin had been seen too. Nobody could, or would, say exactly what happened next. But something put them in the same space that night, and only one of them came back. On July 16th, 2025, Devin Young was officially arrested and charged with murder. He was taken into custody in Union, not far from the campground itself. He made a brief initial court appearance where he entered a denial to the charge, a juvenile equivalent of a not guilty plea. Authorities confirmed that he had been a juvenile guest at the campground at the time of Sonny's death. His connection to her is still unclear. They haven't disclosed whether the two had spoken before that night or what exactly unfolded on the water. They haven't shared any surveillance footage, eyewitness testimony, or statements from friends. But the charge is serious. 1 count of murder. Not manslaughter, not negligence, intentional. The Maine Attorney General's office has announced that they are seeking to try Devin as an adult. The process is ongoing. His next court appearance is scheduled for August 22nd, 2025. Now, let's talk about the vacuum that formed in the meantime. When a community doesn't get clear answers, they fill in the blanks. And Union, usually tight-knit, usually quiet, suddenly had a rumor mill on overdrive. Theories poured onto social media. Some were plausible, that Sonny had stumbled onto something she shouldn't have. Others went full horror novel, claiming there was a serial killer preying on lakeside campers, that more bodies would turn up, that the campground was cursed. People speculated wildly about Devin. Was he local? Was he troubled? Had he hurt someone before? Was he stalking her? Law enforcement pushed back hard. This is not part of a series, Maine State Police said in a July 18th statement. There is no indication of an ongoing threat to the public. But the truth is, for a lot of people, especially women in rural Maine, that line doesn't land. Because the threat isn't a stranger in the bushes. It's someone next door. Someone sharing a campground bathroom. Someone borrowing your firewood or waving to your dog. The threat is hidden in plain sight. and sometimes no one sees it until it's already taken something. In this case, it took Sonny Stewart. And still, there's so much we don't know. Police still haven't released a motive. There's no public evidence of a confrontation, no indication yet whether she was lured, ambushed, or simply unlucky enough to cross paths with the wrong person in the wrong moment. But what we do know is this: a woman is dead, a teenager is facing life-altering charges, and an entire community is still struggling to reconcile how something this violent, this senseless, could have happened right there in the middle of a Maine summer. But before anything else, before the headlines, the mugshot, the court date, there was Sonny. Sunshine Stewart was 48 years old. Born and raised in Tennant's Harbor, she carried the coast in her bones. She'd been a fisherman, a boat captain, a carpenter, and a bartender. Her friends say she was the kind of woman who could hold her own in a dive bar or run a tight crew offshore, and do it all with a cracked grin and a sharp wit. She was so fiercely loyal, her longtime friend told WMTW. She believed in people even when they didn't believe in themselves. That friend, who spoke anonymously, said Sunshine had big plans this summer. She wanted to pick up more carpentry work, maybe start a small side business again. She wasn't looking to leave Maine, but she talked about taking her tools to the islands, maybe heading back to the Virgin Islands, where she'd worked before. That's where she found joy, in building things, on the water, under the sun. She would just give and give and give, another friend shared. And when she needed help, she didn't always know how to ask for it. That contradiction, that quiet strength mixed with vulnerability, is what made her deeply loved and deeply human. She wasn't flashy, she didn't need to be. She was solid, dependable, always moving forward. Her life wasn't easy, but it was hers. She crafted it herself, plank by plank, screw by screw. When she moved into Micmac Cove Family Campground for the summer, she saw it as home base. A place to rest, to reset. She brought her paddleboard, her books, her work gloves. She was surrounded by pine trees, fresh air, and the people who waved to her every morning on the gravel loop around the cabins. And she was safe there. Or at least, she thought she was. That's what makes this so hard for the people who knew her. It wasn't some big city crime. It wasn't late-night recklessness. It was someone else's choice. Someone who saw an opportunity and took it. Someone who didn't see her as a person with a name, a past, or a future. Just a target. Now, in the aftermath, her community is doing what they can to hold her memory close. A celebration of life is planned in Tennant's Harbor on August 10th. Her friends from the islands are planning another one in St. John this September. People are coming from all over. Bar regulars, old crewmates, camping neighbors, and distant cousins she hadn't seen in years. All of them sharing the same story in different ways. Sonny was one of the good ones. A fundraiser created by her family and friends has already raised thousands to help cover funeral expenses. But more than that, it's been flooded with messages. Not just condolences, but memories. Stories of shared meals, stories of Sonny fixing someone's broken trailer hitch without being asked. Stories of her pulling a kayak back to shore during a freak storm and acting like it was nothing. She lived big, one note read, even when no one was watching. And now, as her name fades from the news cycle, that's what people are trying to preserve. Not the fact that she died, but the truth of how she lived. A woman who knew how to repair drywall, navigate by stars, build her own furniture, and get a dog to trust her in 20 seconds flat. That was Sunshine Stewart. She deserved more time. She deserved 1,000 more sunrises on that lake. As of July 29th, 2025, the case against Devin Young remains active and pending. The state continues to seek adult charges which, if granted, could carry a sentence far beyond the juvenile system. If convicted, he could face 25 years to life. But a lot of steps needs to happen before then. The court has to rule on whether Devin can be tried as an adult. Evidence has to be reviewed. Witnesses have to be interviewed. The DA's office needs to decide whether to take this to a full trial or whether a deal will be offered. And hovering above all is the looming question no one has answered publicly. Why? What would cause a 17-year-old to brutally kill a woman nearly 3 times his age? What happened on the shoreline of Crawford Pond that night? Was it premeditated? A random act? A confrontation that spiraled? So far, authorities aren't talking. They've said nothing about what evidence led to Devin's arrest. No DNA disclosures, no mention of a confession, no eyewitnesses have been named. There's no public release of the 911 call or the discovery logs from the pond. Police have simply said there's probable cause and a charge of murder to prove it. That silence is partly strategy. It protects the integrity of the case, especially with a juvenile suspect. But for the community, it's a void, and voids get filled with fear. For the seasonal campers still trickling into Micmac Cove, there's a new edge to every night. Parents walk their kids to the bathroom in pairs. Women don't paddle alone. The trust that once defined that place, that ease, has been cracked. People have started locking their trailer doors at night. There's no going back to how things were. Not for the campground, not for the town, and especially not for the people who love Sunny. That grief doesn't fade. It lingers in the familiar places. The empty stool at the end of the bar, the tools she left behind, the dog who still whines when the paddleboard pulls away from the dock. There's also a long legal road ahead, and that weighs on people too. Friends and family now find themselves thrown into a world of courtrooms, legal jargon, bail hearings, and victim statements. They've had to read articles dissecting Sunny's final moments. They've seen comment threads pick apart her life, wondering why she was alone or what she might have done to put herself at risk, as if being outdoors at night is a provocation, as if she did something wrong. "I don't want her name dragged through the mud," one friend told WMTW. She was strong, she didn't deserve this, and she didn't invite it. So the community has circled the wagons. Her loved ones are showing up. Fundraisers, rallies, candlelight vigils. They're standing behind her and making it clear. Her death will not be reduced to a headline or a clickbait tagline. It's too early to say how this will end, whether Devin Young will be tried as an adult, whether the evidence will hold up in court, whether a jury will ever hear the full story of what happened on that lake. But what's already clear is that Sunny Stewart left a mark on the people who knew her, on the place she called home, and now on the state of Maine. "We're not going to forget her," one neighbor said. "We owe her that." That was the story of Sunshine Sunny Stewart, a woman who deserved so much more than the violent end she met on the still waters of Crawford Pond. Her case is still unfolding, and her community is still healing. If you're listening from Maine, or anywhere small towns feel big enough to hold grief, you know how deeply these stories cut. We'll keep following the updates in Sunny's case, especially as the August court date approaches. If you'd like to support her family, you can find a link to the verified fundraiser in our show notes. And if you or someone you know has been affected by violence like this, you're not alone. We've also linked resources for survivors and support networks across New England. These Mini Morbids are new. They're our way of spotlighting undercovered, urgent, or local stories, ones that need to be told without waiting for a 45-minute deep dive. Think of them as the voices you might miss in the background if you weren't listening close enough. We'll be dropping a new Mini Morbid every Wednesday in between full-length episodes. And speaking of full episodes, this Sunday we're crossing the Atlantic. In episode 2, Whispers from the Pit, we go to County Galway, Ireland, to a place where the bodies of hundreds of babies were quietly buried beneath a septic tank. Their deaths weren't a mystery, they were a cover-up. It's the story of the Tuam babies and the women who never stopped telling the truth about what really happened inside that home. Until then, I'm Angelica, your voice in the dark, your chaos researcher, your lighthouse at the edge of the pines. Lock your doors, hold your people close, and remember, still waters lie